Hey everybody, Mike Shea here, co-creator and writer of Miskatonic High. I'm with Ryan Mendoza, the co-creator and artist of Miskatonic High. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing great.
We are
Feels
talking about
like deja vu.
it does. We are talking about Miskatonic High number 24, the Carnival. Um, can't believe we're on issue 24 already, but feels awesome to be here.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. Still remember the time we were working on the first one.
Yeah, how many years ago was that?
6 years, 5 years, I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
Time flies by so fast.
Yeah, it really does. Um, we are touching on some of the themes that we touched upon in those early issues with Sarah, the rat things, and sort of going back to some of that. So
Yeah.
this is an issue that will reward those who have been around for a long time, but I'm pretty sure that even people who haven't will like it too.
hmm
So let's go ahead and talk. I like to talk about the covers first because it's always the first thing you see and it grabs me. I like this cover a lot of Sarah, Anton, and our little rat thing. Clearly at a carnival and the freak show sign in the back. Why don't you talk about how you came up with this cover?
Yeah, it's always difficult to come up with the image that will uh, tell a story in one page with
Mhm.
a single page. And this time, if you look at the interiors, you will see that the Carnival is a sprawling place. So
Mhm.
picking out just one location out of that place was going to be important for the cover uh, to tell the readers what they could expect from the issue.
Mhm.
So, of course, the central hub of the carnival was the freak show,
Mhm.
and to place it in the cover would uh, limit it. So placing something bigger in the background will help convey the illusion that it's part of something even bigger, which adds to the mystery of wait a minute, what's going on with this issue this time? So
Mhm.
that's always fun to figure out during uh, conceptualization of the covers.
Mhm.
And if you're telling a story, you don't want to give it all away. So uh, it's always a difficult line to manage which characters to include, which
Mhm.
antagonists to leave out, and all those kind of details. So with this one, I think we got into a nice balance with it,
Mhm.
and I really like it too. It's very simple and yet conveys so much story about what's going on in the interiors.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's right. And I always like when there's some danger, some menace to the cover to really, put the characters at risk. And so
Yeah.
having the two carnies, the one with the knives, coming at them, it really does. It creates that tension right off the bat.
Yeah, there's always something about covers that intrigue you when you see it, and it makes you want to go read it, buy it, and go read it. And then when you do read it, you sometimes go back to the cover and you look at the details, and then hey, I know where this comes from. Oh,
Mhm.
this is important. I didn't notice that, and it's part of the fun of comics, and that's why I've loved comics for my whole life.
Mhm. I also think, I don't know if you would do this. Like, I would see a character in the issue, and in panels, the characters tend to be very small, and they're usually bigger on the covers. So it's like I would find a character I like, and then I would go to the cover to look at that character. Like, in this case, I'm assuming people have read this issue. The rat thing. is drawn very nicely here in very rich detail, and so like you can come to the cover and really study it and really get a feel for the character, who's moving very quickly through the rest of the issue.
Yeah, yeah. Usually, when it comes to covers, an artist approaches it differently. It's you put in more detail. You draw the characters more carefully because it's essentially what it's essentially the marketing of the comic. So it
Yeah.
has to be extra special from the interiors. That's why some uh, some series hire other artists to work on their covers, like
Yeah.
painters and other famous artists to
Hmm.
sell the book.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine for me because covers are meant to be special.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like seeing covers by other artists, but usually the one that I always pick up is the one that the interior artist does. Like I like that continuation of the feel of the rest of the issue. Like that's if I have a choice, that's generally what I'm going to pick. But every now and again, I'll see a really special cover and be like, okay, that's pretty awesome. I got to get that.
Well, it's always been like that since the very start of comics,
Hmm.
anyway. I mean, the interior artist is usually the cover artist.
Hmm.
It wasn't until like the 90s when variant covers started appearing and guest cover
Hmm.
artists started uh, becoming more popular.
Yeah, and like some artists, like they could turn into like that was their only job is to just do covers. Like Brian Boland or Art Adams is
Yeah,
a person who does a
that's
lot
true.
of just covers. It's those famous guys, and they just got famous and just now they just do covers mostly.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and start getting into the issue. We had Matt give us the previously. He is aware of a lot of the different things that are going on, and he's got his own situation going on, as we will see very soon. Um, he is pretending to be his ancestor who has taken over his body to try and convince the Arkham Society that he is his ancestor and to not kill him. Um, Aiding him is an elder thing who communicates telepathically, so only he can hear it, who's feeding him lines to try and make him sound like his ancestor. So we get a bit of that in here.
Yeah,
Um,
I should commend you with these summaries. I mean, it must be getting more challenging as the series goes on. I mean, we were talking about being in issue 24. I mean, it was probably easier during season one when you only have a couple of issues
right.
to summarize. But when you're up to the 20s, it must be getting challenging just which one to include.
Right. Well, imagine trying to explain Anton's story. So here's a guy who
Hmm.
went back in time, got killed, came back forward in time as a ghost that people don't remember, who has now been reanimated into a human being again, but people still don't remember him. Like that's a
Yeah.
hell of a description.
That's why some it's important that you repeat some things in future issues. Like, why is this character saying these things already? Doesn't the other characters know this already?
Hmm.
I mean, it's actually for the readers to remind them that what went on in the past, because like I said before, every issue is a potential first issue for any reader.
Right. And also the nature of the comics. So they come out every 2 to 3 months. If you're reading, 10, 15 other comics, it's really easy to forget the storyline or what's going on with the characters in any given comic. And I always appreciate when they put in something that tells me what happened so that I can go, "Oh yeah, that's right," and get right
Yeah,
back there. Yeah.
yeah,
So we start off this story at Sarah's house. So she lives with her grandma, and her grandma is screaming first thing in the morning. Sarah wakes up. As we remember the last time that Grandma was screaming, it's because she thought the rat things were coming into the house. And so Sarah immediately assumes that it must be a rat thing, like maybe her dad or somebody like that trying to get into the house. But no, it's just Anton. He was sleeping there last night, and Grandma doesn't remember. I don't think he asked Sarah if he could stay there. He just sort of snuck in and fell asleep there, and um, is having Sarah explain it to her grandma and making her grandma feel like she forgot that Anton was allowed to be there, because her grandma is, uh, uh, getting sort of Alzheimer's, senility, sort of losing some of her memory. So it's kind of easy to persuade her that she probably just forgot. Um,
Yeah.
Anton Anton needs a place to stay because where he was staying, um, was Matt's old place, which he is renting out to Jenny and her dad, which we'll get into in a little bit. Um, I love every time you draw Grandma because I think she's hysterical. Um, so why don't we talk a little about this, about, Grandma, Sarah, their house. I mean, it has a very unique personality that you manage to capture every time.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I drew the house was like issue two,
Hmm.
and at that time I was just basically drawing stuff that I recall or see on references, and I didn't
Hmm.
realize I was going to repeatedly draw each part of the house. So if there are inconsistencies from issue to issue, I apologize, but it's just very hard to keep track of locations
Hmm.
sometimes. But I try hard to keep it consistent, especially with how the layout of the house is, the
Hmm.
rooms. It has to look a certain way so that it's different from when you go to Simon's place or Alex's place or
Yeah.
Matt's place. At least
Hmm.
that's that's a something that's what you call this consistent.
Yep.
And with Sarah's house, it's got this old country feel to it. But I mean, I'm not really familiar with old American houses, but there are some houses here in the Philippines that's very American style. So
Hmm.
I drew inspiration from some of them.
Hmm.
So it's always interesting to come up with locations such as houses and buildings because it's very important to the story to set the tone for what's going on.
Hmm.
It's really part of the characters of the book
Hmm.
because when you're in there, if you don't notice it, that's a good thing because it only means that it's part of the book and there's nothing wrong with it, and it's like immersion,
Hmm.
world immersion.
Well, it works really well. I mean, so like I look at that second panel and I see, the paneling coming down and it reveals like the brick behind it, Everything about Sarah and her world and her house and her clothes are always just a little bit frayed at the edges or falling apart a little bit, or, secondhand or whatever it is. So, no, like I know the layout of the house well enough. I know the bedrooms are upstairs. I know the bathroom is upstairs. I know Grandma's living room is downstairs where she sits and watches the TV, and then we have the kitchen down there in the back. But like I don't need to feel like I'm in the exact location. I don't need to know exactly where I am in the house because I look at the paneling on the wall where it's kind of crumbling and falling apart, and I see the brick behind it, and I know, oh yeah, I'm in Sarah's house.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. I mean, we discussed before about realism
Hmm.
in comic books and why some issues would tend to fall back from the schedule.
Hmm.
And back in the 1960s, artists like Kirby would just crank out issues after issues, month after month. Like he would do like 4 issues a month, I think.
I know, it's insane.
So you have to teach yourself certain shorthands so that it doesn't take forever to draw.
Right.
And with a series that's reached 24 issues, you kind of tend to learn and just do stuff to convey that you're in the same place
Hmm.
whenever it changes.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's always challenging, but it's also fun to figure things out like this.
Hmm.
I mean, it wouldn't be that much fun. It was just easy. I mean, just go with AI.
Yeah. So Sarah convinces Grandma that Anton is going to stay for a little bit. Anton and her decide to head off to the school bus. They talk a little bit about sort of what's going on about that Sarah lives on the orchard, and the orchard is over the rat thing's cave. So like there's a series of caves underneath the house, the orchard, and what Sarah says is actually the caves stretch probably throughout the county. Um, and that she's kind of gotten used to the idea of the rat things being down there, that they stay down there and she stays up there, and there's a nice division between humans on top and rat things down below.
Yeah, yeah.
um I That's the first panel on page 2 of Sarah's house and the barn and everything. That's really beautiful. And the colors are an interesting choice because it feels like early morning that they're getting up, but it's also there's some like nice orange and purples in there. That's a really beautiful panel.
Yeah, when you start learning about color theories and stuff, you learn early on to include all colors.
Hmm.
So whether the scene is muted or has this pale aura around it, you should still try to include as much color as you can because that tends to trick the eye and the brain into seeing that image as something pleasing.
Mm.
So so when when the script asks for early morning, it's very hard to actually convey that without going to too much detail. But
Yeah.
you kind of get the feel of it, just the laziness of the scene,
Hmm.
being calm and serene, and when you wake up in the morning, everything kind of feels like it's drained of color or pale
Hmm.
until you
Yeah.
get that first cup of java and then everything ramps up. So yeah, there's ways to trick the brain to feeling those kind of sensations,
Hmm.
even though you've never been to a place like that or you're not currently in a place like that.
Hmm.
There's always way to convey that
Hmm.
in an image, in a 2D image,
Right.
even.
Right. And I think you're right. I think it's the the different sort of color choices. So normally when you're looking at mountains, they don't look purple. And so the different colors is sort of telling you that it's a different time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Um
I mean, if you try to look at pictures from different times of the day, it tends to be very different. Even if you look at buildings in cities
mhm,
during the afternoon and the morning, it's very different. So
yeah.
that's part of the storytelling, actually, is colors, and colorists don't usually get the their deserved attention, or
It's true.
because the truth is it's the thing that really um, tells a different story from the visuals of the penciling and the inking. So it's
Hmm.
very essential to a comic book.
Right. It's nice. It sort of adds to a level of the storytelling that I like, which is so in this issue, and actually there's a fair number of issues where we do it. We start the issue at the beginning of the day and end the issue at the end of the day. So it's like a nice progression. So you really feel like you're at the beginning, early morning, things are calm, and then it's going to get crazier and crazier and crazier till the end of the day when things are going to calm down again. So yeah, I mean
Like real
all
life.
yeah, like real life. Like all of the energy is working in the same direction, It's the writing is telling that story, the art is telling the story, the colors are telling the story, Hopefully it when it all fires on the same cylinders, it really works well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they are going off to grab the school bus to go to school. Um, they're talking about Anton and how he can't talk to his family because his family don't know he ever existed. And he doesn't have a house to live in. And Sarah offers to let him stay at her house. Because, grandma doesn't know and they got plenty of room. Um, and to be honest, it's nice to see Sarah and Anton sort of developing. Like the last time they were together, they were kind of yelling at each other because Anton was asking for the knife and wasn't really being very nice to Sarah. And Sarah's like, you're not really my friend. You're never nice to me and things like that. And so it's kind of like a nice progression of their relationship that Anton's trying to be nicer and Sarah's, kind of responding well to having a friend.
Yeah, well, it's usually like that anyway. When you're not really familiar with a person, you tend to be kind of aloof or even kind of aggressive towards that person. But once you get to know each other, you kind of recognize that you have more things in common than you actually think,
Right.
despite the differences of opinions or beliefs.
Right. There's also something to, when characters need something, it's a lot easier to be friends when you need something from somebody else than it is like when you don't. So, Anton really needs a place to stay. So he's kind of got a reason that he should be nice to Sarah and respond to her niceness. So it's kind of like necessity is the mother of friendship in a
Well,
way.
it was the same from the last time they were talking. He
Hmm.
needed the knife,
Right.
and that's why it was the only reason why he approached Sarah.
Hmm. Yeah, Anton's kind of there's a term for it, transitional, like transactional. He he's a very much a transactional person. He's like in whatever he's doing, it's about what he needs at that exact moment. And part of the growth of Anton is not just being like that. To see, okay, these are people who are more than just what they can do for me. Like I need to be nicer to them because friendship is a thing beyond just a transactional relationship.
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
important for every character to have their own journeys.
Hmm.
I mean, if you start out at one point being the same at the end point, it's useless.
Right. You didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the readers didn't learn anything, and the characters, because the characters didn't learn anything,
Hmm.
and the readers joined the journey with the characters.
Okay. So while we're watching them get on the bus, we're also seeing this hand pop out from underneath the ground, and it's clearly a rat thing hand, hissing. So we know some rat things are coming. We know something's going to happen. Um, so while they're on the bus, we switch over to Alex's house, where Jenny is hanging out and she is reading Alex's notebook. So Alex's notebook is the one that she took from Anton from way back in the first season, where he was copying down notes from the torn pages from the Necronomicon that they had brought forward in time. So she has that notebook now. She is writing in it her notes from learning magic from Joseph Kerwin. Um, and Jenny, of course, is interested in all this, and she's reading it, and she's kind of got this sort of teenage girl mentality of magic, or she's pretending to, like everything is Twilight fan fiction or something like that. Magic is, you know, interesting and fun, and people are going to end up, with relationships with each other, and kind of where Alex was at the beginning of the series, where she was really into magic. and she is now in a different place about it. She, is a lot more wary of it because she knows kind of the what happens with Eldritch magic, which is people die, people get cursed, or worse.
Yeah,
Um,
her own journey has dictated that
mhm,
magic is not to be relied on. There's always consequences if you want
always.
to use it.
Hmm. So Jenny is reading about, summoning a Golgoroth, which is, of course, is the tentacle monster from way back in issue 1 and, subsequent issues. Um, I like how excited Jenny is reading this. It's like she is enjoying herself quite a lot through this whole thing. Um, was Jenny a fun character for you to draw in this one?
Yeah, she was. I mean, from the very beginning, I always thought that she would be a interesting character.
Hmm.
And the more I draw her, the more I'm interested in her character. I mean, I think it's always like that. The more you draw a character, the more fun you have with the character, and the more you figure out her mannerisms,
Hmm.
her um, the way she moves,
Hmm.
and you start thinking about these things so that like the locations and the settings it becomes more consistent.
Hmm.
And there's this particular character I have in mind which I won't mention, but I kind of liken her to that character.
Hmm.
She's very mysterious and she likes um, ancient histories,
Hmm.
and she's also very, her humor is very subtle.
Hmm.
So I like that about the character.
Hmm.
You don't know whether she's being ironic or whether she's being funny or whatever.
Hmm.
And as as we delve more into her character, I think readers will notice a bit more about
Hmm.
her personality.
Hmm. True. For Jenny, you talk about like her mannerisms and everything, and so the one that gets me here is that fourth panel where she's just kind of lying on the bed, and it's like it's almost like she's playing. She knows she's playing with Alex. Like, you know, I we know that she is working with the shadow guy.
Mhm.
Um, and we know that she's got some sort of scheme going on with Alex, to sort of ensnare Alex. And just that fourth panel, it almost looks like she's playing like almost like a cat playing with a mouse. Just sort of pawing at Alex there, and uh,
Yeah, but she also has this certain confidence in her and
mhm,
also kind of relaxed manner to her that
mhm,
none of the other characters have. I
yeah,
mean, Matt and Anton would probably be more of a slacker type of characters with
mhm,
how lax they are, but they're not really like, you know, people who are very confident about
mm,
themselves and they
yeah,
don't really care about how they look to other people, so they just relax
mhm,
themselves in front of them. And
mhm,
that's kind of the vibe I want from Jenny, is
mhm,
to just
yeah.
be this character who doesn't give a crap about what other people think about her.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so
that's a good.
she's very relaxed, and she's very, she's very open to other people and also very confident about
Yeah.
her her being.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually now that you say that. Okay. So they decide that they need to get to school. So they go ahead and start heading down. Um, Jenny's dad asks if they want to ride to school, and the girls say, "Nope, we're just gonna ride our broomsticks." Um, which again, that confidence that she can just say things and she knows that they'll be taken as a joke, and even if that's not completely a joke. Um, and here we get the conversation between Jenny's dad and Alex's dad. So we don't know much about Jenny's dad up until this point. And at point of fact, we didn't know much about Alex's dad other than he's a bit of a drunk and he takes things apart up to this point. So they have this conversation. Alex's dad asks, what are you doing in town? And it comes out that Jenny's dad is an agent for the FBI, and he's got a case and he needs some help because he's got a whole lot of bank records. And so he needs somebody. And it turns out that Alex's dad is on sabbatical, is on some kind of leave from the IRS. But we also find out that Alex's dad is kind of in a messed up place. We knew Alex's dad was in a messed up place, but now we start to find out a little bit more about it. That really he's been beaten up since Alex's mom died, and that he blames himself, even though Jenny's dad says that he shouldn't. And Jenny's dad encourages him to come work with him on this case to help him figure out what's going on. That it would be good for him, and also mentions, hey, one of the checks are missing, which goes way back to issue 5, I think, when we saw Matt steal one of the checks.
Mhm.
We had talked about this an awful lot about getting this story going, and that this was the perfect time to do it, with Jenny's
Yeah.
dad and Alex's dad and putting them together. I really like this conversation. I like how you handle it
Yeah.
with, really focusing. You can tell that Jenny's dad is really examining the room, and we're examining the room with him. Can
Yeah.
you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, the time I read it in the script, I
Mhm.
already was feeling the vibe of the scenario, and
Mhm.
I think that translates well when the script is very solid like that. So you know how to stage each of the panels, and with this one, it's since is it Mason is one of the agents.
Mhm.
I wanted them to convey that
Mhm.
immediately with just this scene. They're just talking,
Mhm.
and usually with talking scenes, it's usually very boring. It's
Yep.
usually just exposition. So you have to come up with interesting scenes to convey the conversation in a more interesting manner. And with this one, uh, I decided to show a little bit of Mason's investigative skills.
Mhm.
So with just this conversation, it kind of um, elevates the scene into something more important, more interesting. It's more like a Perry Mason kind of scene
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
when you're just talking and then you just realize that wait a minute, this guy is sizing me up.
Right.
So not only is the conversation very interesting, but it's also nice to bring out the personalities of the characters
Yeah.
through those scenes as well. I mean, like you said, we don't really know much about Alex's dad, nor do we know anything much about Jenny's dad because he's new.
Right.
So with this single page, we kind of conveyed a lot with their way they talk to each other, the way they move, the way
Mhm.
they just interact with the scenery, with the setting.
Mhm.
It it conveys a lot about what the story is about them or and where it
Mm.
might go.
Right. Right. I also like when dialogue is saying one thing, and the art is telling a different thing. So, he's talking to Alex's dad, and they're talking about the accident or whatever it is. But a lot of times you can just read the text and get an idea of what's happening in that panel. But here's a case where you really have to read the text, but also look at the panel because there's two different things going on. That
Mhm.
when the art can tell its own story with the dialogue telling a bit of a different story, it just those layers make it so much richer, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Just
Yeah.
like the third panel, which
Hmm.
is just a wrecked sink,
Hmm.
and then so yeah. I mean, this is what we keep talking about: visuals and dialogue working together,
Yeah.
even though they're telling totally different stories. They're still
Right.
telling the same thing.
Right.
Because it's just a deeper kind of thing. Because when uh, Agent Mason is looking around, he can tell the depths that Alex's dad has gone through just
Yeah.
by looking at the kitchen,
Hmm.
and then by looking at the drawer,
Hmm.
you also convey that, yeah, there's something more about what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yep. And hopefully we leave the reader in a good place where when Agent Mason is talking about the financial records he has and how they're only come through in voicemail messages because they can't exist on paper. Hopefully, some readers will pick up on that, some readers won't, and that's fine. But the readers who do will remember, okay, you know, it's the druids are the ones who hate things on paper, and what they have a lot of uh, records of course, are Matt's family, the Archimist Society. Um,
Yeah.
so so that
Also, the
gives
mention of the bank
yeah.
can also give a clue about that.
Yeah, not exactly subtle, but so we jump to Matt's house. Matt is, of course, still living in the mansion. He is he has to dress up. I love the suits that you're putting Matt in now. That he has to look like an old adult, which is completely the opposite of what Matt used to dress up like. Um, and that he's with this elder thing, and the elder thing is explaining to him about the Arkham Society and how it's a collection of people who are very powerful, and he needs to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
And the first thing that happens at the meeting is he's practically attacked by and this elder gentleman who says he wants his boy back, his boy set free. Um, this is a character who will, of course, become more important as we move on. So I don't want to belabor it, but this is the Wheatley's Wheatley's. I don't know how to pronounce it. Grandson is being held in the asylum, which we had seen in a previous issue as well for eagle-eyed readers. Um, and so Matt has to repeat exactly what the elder thing is telling him telepathically to basically put Whately back in his place, which we see in that final panel. Um, can you talk a bit about? Um, well, this is an interesting page because we're seeing the mansion again, and we get the feel of the mansion. There's a lot of reds to this page, which really suggests kind of the uh, drama, the tension that's going on here. And
Yeah,
then
the aggressive nature of the scene, and
yeah,
the
exactly.
tension,
Hmm.
around the council or the society.
Hmm.
Let me just say that it's always weird to draw a character next to an elder thing,
It is. It looks so odd. And
walking
that
casually. inside the halls of a mansion. I mean, come on. What other comic book does this?
Yeah, that's where we are now. This is just a thing that happens.
Yeah, yeah. And concerning Matt's suit, I mean, like like we mentioned before, the consistency. So it's just derived from what we saw from previous ancestors.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to mimic what his ancestors wore back in what was that, issue 9 or something.
I
Uh,
want
but
to,
but the
yeah.
reds, like you mentioned, is kind of emblematic of his family. I mean, his mother wore that practically, so I had to put that in there
Mm-hmm.
somehow. And so, yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
him looking good in a suit is kind of um, telltale sign that yeah, he is a Williams.
Yep. Hmm. He is one of them.
He may not like it, but he has to
Right.
admit he looks good in it.
He does, probably by design. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that's a great point, that M- Matt's story, kind of like we talked about Anton, is Matt's story is about trying to escape this family and what it is, and like how, rooted it is into the town, into the history, into magic culture, into, all the bad things that go along with it. And how, the more he tries to get out of it, the more he gets dug into it,
yeah.
you know.
And wouldn't it be weird for this kid to like order this society around? I mean, it
It
must
is.
be very unsettling for all these people around him,
That
which
I think.
it's which incidentally makes me
Mhm.
kind of curious about who these people are.
Mhm. Yep. But I also like, I always like when when you see a secret society or something in a comic or a movie, and they're all cast in shadows, and you can't ever see them, because that allows the imagination to make them much worse than they are.
Hmm.
Like
Because they
if
can actually be your neighbor,
right, they could be your neighbor. They
or could be an office worker or
Mhm.
something.
Right.
It's
But
scary.
I also like, that whole nature of, a kid sort of ordering them around, and how that would seem so out of place. But then you think the Arkham Society, they're probably used to this being
Yeah,
switching bodies, and they're used to a
yeah. I
different
was thinking the
body.
same.
Yeah, ordering them around. So maybe it just doesn't mean anything to them anymore.
And probably most of them were indoctrinated into the society at an early age anyway.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's probably just the way of the group
Yeah.
to eliminate the elders.
Yeah, you're just used to it. Goes along with the secret handshake.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, so Matt tells.
Secret discounts at
Yeah.
Starbucks.
Yeah, it's much, you get 10% off. Um,
Mm.
so Matt tells off Old Whately, and he tells him we have to wrap this up because he needs to actually has to go to school. Um, that allows us to jump over. Ren is giving Simon a ride to his new school. The last issue we saw, Simon got expelled from Miskatonic High for stealing the election for election fraud, and so now has to go to public school. Um, Ren is still trying to butter him up, because she wants to see his dad's research and things like that, and she's like a little wants to make sure that she keeps connected to him, even if they're not going to the same school. So kind of offers to give him a ride. Plus, Ren's the only one who's got a car, so
Yeah, that
yeah.
that car's premium must be pretty high by now.
Oh God, it's got to be terrible. Her dad must throw a fit. Um, so she is pointing out that she doesn't think that he needs to worry about homework or anything here, and he goes in to register for class, and sees the school secretary, who gives him his schedule for the day, and he finds out that he's got typing one and remedial chemistry and auto shop. Like he's really got a really low level classes, and he is freaking out about it because this is Simon we're talking about. There are no AP classes. There's no honor classes that he can take. And so he desperately asks the secretary one more important question. She's like, "Fine, what is it? Is there still time to run for student president?" And she's like, "You are in for a very long day." Um, can you talk about drawing this new school? Because you had to sort of figure out a way to make it feel different than Miskatonic High did. So how did you approach this one instead?
Yeah, wait, you mentioned that this was sort of a regional school, so I
Hmm.
kind of looked into that, and of course, it wouldn't be anything like a private school as
Hmm.
prestigious as Miskatonic High. So that was very interesting, and so the way it's built would
Hmm.
be different from the reddish bricks of Miskatonic High. So this would be much more modern
Hmm.
in design, more practical,
Hmm.
and essentially more simple than what we're used to seeing with Miskatonic High. And I kind of like that because it really separates it from what we're used to.
Hmm.
And with this school, they also don't have uniforms, which which makes the students much more different from
Hmm.
what Simon is used to. I mean,
Right.
he's still wearing his uniform, for Christ's sake. So it's kind of funny that way. It also helps that it it further um, hammers home that Simon is in a different world.
Yeah.
Because if we had the students in uniforms as well, I mean that could work as well. You just have them in a different style. But
Right.
seeing Simon as the only one who's wearing a school jacket makes it more interesting, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I do. And it tells you everything you need to know about Simon.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so back at Miskatonic High, Anton and Sarah are heading in, and Sarah is seeing that the kids have drawn things all over her locker and about rat things and about Mouse Girl and all this stuff. And not only did they draw things on her locker, they broke into her locker and started tearing up her that she has postcards that she has on the inside of the door of the locker. They put like a mouse trap in there with some cheese in there. I mean, it's just they're really picking on her now that they know that she has a tail, and she's losing it. I mean, she's in that second panel, you can see that her aggression is coming out. This isn't the Sarah that we knew from the beginning, who was pretty meek. This is a Sarah who gives in to some of her aggression. Um, the fridge, the vice principal steps up and tells the other students to back off. And meanwhile, Anton, again, proving to that he's got some growth in him, starts helping her clean up and put things back together, and kind of explains the point of view from the other side. Like he would have been somebody who was picking on Sarah before, but now understands, like, the kids are picking on her to try and to get her to act like a rat thing, because that's what they want to see. And if she gives into that, she's going to be doing it for the rest of her high school life. And if she wants to prove that she's not a rat thing, she has to show that she's not a rat thing. Um, so I like some of these characters in the background, like the one with the green hair. That's nice.
He's got the
The headband.
the tie. Yeah, it's just fun things that high school kids used
Hmm.
to do, right? They just
Right.
mess around with their clothing. I mean, they don't take school seriously. I think it's
Right.
important to convey that in school related stories, just like
Hmm.
what we had from the previous page, where we have all these different students doing different kind of stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, we can't really show each and every character, so you have to like pick and choose which ones are the most interesting, and you just try to do something different with them.
Hmm.
Just, I mean, it's already obvious that each of the main characters have their own way of dressing up,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
like Anton has one of his shirts tucked out,
Hmm.
and then Alex has her whole shirt tucked out actually.
Hmm.
So I was thinking, what else could a student do with his uniform? So I thought, you know what? I've been watching a lot of Cobra Kai lately. I'm gonna turn this guy into Karate Guy.
Well, I think I saw something which was like kids with high school uniforms, like sometimes they read the letter of the rules, which is you have to wear a tie, but they don't say where you have to wear the tie. So like you could
Mhm.
wear it around your head and you're still within the school rules and like, the teachers or whatever
Yeah,
aren't going to fight it.
and kids usually like to be rebellious anyway.
Hmm. Right.
They like seeking attention
Hmm.
most of the time.
Right.
So this is just one way to express themselves, and
Mm.
I think it just brings the fun out of high school life anyway. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's always fun to
Right.
come up with things like that. I mean, if you notice it, you notice it.
Right. So the kids head on to the community service club. Mr. Waleed is telling them that there is going to be the winter carnival, and that the community services club is setting up a booth there. And so it's the carnival is going to open technically after school, so they need kids during school to go and set up the booth. He asked for volunteers, and Sarah's like, I have study hall, and I can't wait to get out of school. And Anton's like, well, I have biology, but the biology teacher prefers it when I don't go. Um, so they volunteer and they head out, and then we get this great splash page of the winter carnival. Again, for someone who hasn't seen snow, doesn't live in an environment like that, can you talk a bit about drawing a winter carnival?
Yeah, with carnivals, I mean, we have carnivals here,
Yeah.
so that's no problem. But winter carnivals is a new thing, although I think I've seen uh, some videos about it.
Hmm.
But you gave me a few places where I could draw inspiration, so
Hmm.
I kind of looked into those. So yeah, I just merged them all into one. But
Hmm.
of course, I don't really appreciate too much realism in comic books, and so it's always nice to bring in touches of fantasy into them,
Hmm.
and it's always more interesting when you bring in wild stuff into
Hmm.
into places like this. I mean, there's got to be a place out there that's as as goofy as this one, right? I
I
mean,
think so.
if there was one place, I'd go there. It looks like a fun place.
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely go there. I also like the ice sculptures right up front because they look very familiar to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, if you read through all of the previous issues, I think most of the characters there will look familiar.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's 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 sculptures from dreams.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, I also so the one of the things that we had talked about was the idea that so Sarah is kind of going through some terrible things right now. And this carnival is kind of like presents this dreamlike world of where it's someplace where things are going to be fun and it's like an escape from, her problems. Um, so we have Anton and Sarah going through there and checking out the food because Anton loves to eat. Plus he doesn't really have a home anymore, so he doesn't get 3 square meals anymore. So he would love this. Um, they go ahead and set up the booth. Anton is talking a bit about trying out for the school play. Um, that's a setup for a future issue. One of our ideas from very early on was the idea of doing a school play, and it's something that's going to become very important very soon. So wanted to drop some hints about that right now. Um, they managed to set up the community services club booth and decide to go ahead and since they finished up, why not go ahead and check out the carnival. Um, and they have tons of fun. Anton gets a hot dog, Sarah gets to pop some balloons, but very quickly they run out of money because this is Sarah we're talking about. She's the only one with the money and she doesn't have a whole lot. Are these what carnivals in the Philippines are like? I mean, this feels very much like an American carnival that I've been to. So I'm curious, is this what a carnival feels like where you are?
No,
No.
actually, not that much. I mean, this feels more like a theme park to me.
Right. Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, we have carnivals here, but not to this extent, is what
Yeah.
I mean. I mean, there's probably a couple of like snack areas, and the rides would probably be there.
Mhm.
Zoltan would probably not be there. But you kind of pick things here and
Mhm.
there that might kind of work for this version of a carnival. I
Yeah.
mean, the crazier it is, the better. I
Right.
mean, we have rat things in this series,
Yeah. True.
so it's just things that would might look interesting to potential readers. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's just fun stuff uh, that I thought would be interesting for readers. And plus, I also like it when characters in the comic book uh, eat.
Mhm.
It's always fun to draw food.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean it does. It looks very much like carnivals that we get here because they package all of these things up to like trucks and they just drive them to the next town. They just go from town to town doing this. And it again, it looks very very much like carnivals I've seen. So good job.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. So without money, they decide to go out and check out some of the sort of more of attractions, and they see the freak show. They don't have any money, so they decide to sneak in. Um, they go in and they start checking out the freak show things when it's not open, and they find out, oh, the frog boy is just rubber pants that somebody puts on, and the giant spider is just a magnifying glass on a spider and things like that. Again, we had not quite freak shows when I was a kid at the carnivals, but there were like come see the crazy horned pig or something like that, and you would give them your quarter and you would go get to check this stuff out. And it was always so incredibly fake, and you knew it was fake, and you're like, okay,
I
I
think
I
the
spent
extent of what I saw before was a mermaid.
yeah, yep,
And then we
exactly.
had horror houses,
Hmm.
and that kind of freaked me out because it had drawings of severed hands, which was
Oh,
kind of gory for a young kid.
yeah, that is good. Um, in the freak show tent, they start hearing noises and they find one of the young rat things in a cage. Um, and Sarah recognizes it as one of them from one of the little ones from under the cave. If again, people who remember back in issue 2, we actually saw the young rat thing was one of them that was kind of attacking the teens. Um, Sarah, of course, wants nothing to do with it until it says her name. It says Sarah, um, and she thinks that Anton is doing it, but he says it wasn't me. And she's like, "But the only rat thing that's ever done that was my dad." Um,
Mhm.
can we talk about the little rat thing? Who eventually will name Kimmy, but because it looks a little bit more refined than when we did it in issue 2, but I also probably expect that you've drawn so many rat things since issue 2 that probably you've refined how you draw a rat thing now. Do you mind talking about the sort of how you approached her, coming from way back in issue 2 to how you design her now?
Yeah, yeah. It's always a progression with when it comes to art. I mean, even the characters look vastly different from what
Hmm.
they look like from issue 1.
Hmm.
So it just naturally comes to an artist to draw certain characters in certain ways. I mean, I'd be disappointed if there's no progression to
Right.
the way the characters look throughout the series. With this scene, it's more Burton-esque kind of
Hmm. Yeah.
setting. So the whole imagery is kind of derived from that. You know,
Hmm.
the certain candy-esque aesthetics
Hmm.
of of what Burton usually does, but it's still kind of bright
Hmm.
and dark at the same time. So
Hmm.
that's the things I kind of focused with this scene.
Hmm.
And with Kimmy, uh, I think we discussed before, but I'm not sure if we should reveal it now. But anyway, it's a minor thing, but the rat things seem to have well, at least Kimmy has a growth problem.
Hmm.
So she's different in this issue because she's growing exponentially bigger.
Hmm.
I mean, she's aging differently from what humans normally do.
Right.
Let's just say.
I think that's right. Um, so Sarah doesn't know quite why, but she starts trying to let Kimmy go, or I'm going to refer to her as Kimmy, even though we don't name her until much later. Um, Starts letting Kimmy go. Anton's like, "What the heck? We got to get out of here. The carnies are coming back." And she's like, "No, I got to do it. You go if you want." And so Anton's like, "Ah, damn it." So he comes back and he decides, "Okay, let me help you." And he smashes open the lock just as the carnies come in, and they make a run for it, and the carnies start chasing them. I I I love the visual image of them being electrified. And you can see their skeletons. I think that's so cool. I love that. It feels like the
Yeah,
old cartoons where Jerry would electrify Tom, and you would
yeah, yeah.
see,
The
yeah.
the old gag shows.
Hmm.
I mean, it kind of fits the Burton-esque aesthetic of the scene, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Hmm.
kind of it's kind of modern gothic or something.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. And also, it always kind of have to remind some of our readers sometimes that like the comic is serious but not that serious. It's we exist somewhere, right, not really realism and not parody making fun of everything. It's like it's somewhere in the middle. So sometimes it leans a little bit more one cartoonish, and sometimes it leans a little bit more serious. And I like that. I like that room to play in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always fun to have a broad spectrum
Hmm.
of how you can tell a story, and you're not limiting yourself into grim and gritty all the
Yeah.
time. I mean, it tends to become boring like that. And that's why some popular shonen manga have gags
Hmm.
thrown into them. And
Right.
then, you know, it's always fun to change it up once in a while.
Right, and it's the other end too. It's like, things that exist in comedy, it's like they can only exist here. It's when you can do the full spectrum where you can take things that are funny and then make them a little serious or a little dark and dangerous, or you can take things that are dark and dangerous and throw in a bit of humor. It's just it gives you more paints to paint with.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I went with the Burton-esque aesthetics, because it kind of reminds me of his movies wherein he doesn't really take things too seriously. I mean, there's always kind of goofy scenes that he throws in there
Right.
just to remind people that, yeah, this is fictional story,
Right. Right. And
and
it
then
also
we can have fun.
Right, and it also kind of lulls the audience into thinking, okay, I don't need to take this too seriously. It's just fun, so that we can then hit you later on with something more serious, and the shock will be bigger.
Yeah, yeah. I was watching this show, this new anime show, which featured aliens and ghosts and stuff.
Hmm.
And then for the first few episodes, it was so weird and goofy and strange. And then all of a sudden, bam, it hits you with a very serious episode. And I was like, I was swallowing my own saliva because of how impactful the scenes was. It was
Oh,
really riveting. So it was kind of that
yep,
strange transition of being goofy, and then so when the serious stuff hits, it really hits you hard.
right,
So that
exactly.
that was surprising.
Hmm. Yep, that's exactly the realm that I like when we can pull it off in this comic. Um, so the carnies are chasing after the kids, and they're running through the carnival. There's a strong man who tries and stops them. They dip into the showgirl tent, which makes Anton very happy. Um, and they come out, and Kimmy starts running one way, and Anton's like, "This is great. Let's let her go. She's free now. She can do what she wants, and we can go. Get out of here." And Sarah's like, "No, what? I have to stay with her. She could cause problems out here, or she could get in trouble, or whatever it is." And there's something that Sarah is feeling right now that she kind of feels responsible for Kimmy and what's going to happen. And Anton is being pulled along for the ride. Um, they run smack dab into this ice wall. Again, we had talked about some of the references and some of the winter carnivals. They like actually build like forts or walls or houses or things out of ice, kind of like igloos, but kind of big structures. And I thought that would be really cool for us to see here. And so they're trapped, and the carnies start coming up to them. And be like, we don't want you kids. We just want the rat thing, girl. Um, and Kimmy sees, but they don't see until too late that the giant spider from the freak show tent has been latched onto one of their heads, and they start freaking out, as I would if a giant spider was on my head.
I mean, I was freaking out just drawing that thing because I had to refer to a image of a tarantula, and I don't like spiders.
No, I don't like spiders either. Do you guys have poisonous spiders there?
Probably, but not in this part of
Mm, yeah.
the woods, as they
And
say.
not here either, but I have a friend in Oklahoma who was telling me he was cleaning out his garage and came across a black widow spider, and I was like,
Oh
no,
damn!
no, no, I'm out. No, not going to
I
Oklahoma.
I'd be moving state.
Yep, no, that's it. Nope, not going to do that.
I mean, there's these places in Japan wherein they even have signs
Hmm.
on the grass telling people not to bother because there's a poisonous spider there.
Oh my God, can you imagine? Mm-mm.
Because some of them are Buddhists, so they don't want to harm the spider.
Oh yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah,
So
yeah,
there you go for people who want to live in Japan.
yeah. Well, I have a cousin who lives in Australia, where they have all of
Oh,
the crazy
oh yeah,
poisonous
yeah,
spiders.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see that big spider there that
hmm,
children just grab and throw?
yeah. It's insane. I don't understand
What about the one where it's eating a bird?
it. Yeah, and they got is that the place where they have the giant crabs things that crawl up? Oh, I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
yeah. I'm perfectly happy here where we don't get poisonous things. So while the carnies are occupied with this spider, the kids, Kimmy crawls or digs a hole underneath the ice wall, and they climb underneath and are about to again. Anton wants to get rid of Kimmy, and Kimmy bites her, and Anton's like, "Oh man, I hope I don't get rabies." Um, but Sarah's still like, no, we're responsible for her. We gotta get her out of here. So they decide to run into the school as a way to sort of lose the carnies. Um, when inside the school, we see Mr. Waleed, Ren, Jenny, Alex, going ahead and painting some backdrops and really getting ready for the school play. Um, Jenny, I think, is like stage manager, and so Alex is helping out building sets, and Ren is, of course, going to be the star of the show. When Anton, Sarah, and Kimmy run by, um, and the carnies are chasing after them. Um, Anton is upset that one of them thinks Sarah, they're calling Sarah the rat girl, but are actually calling Kimmy, and so he attacks the carny as Alex does some of her water magic to sort of make it slippery and they fall. And Sarah and Kimmy run out, and the carnies are like, hey, we're going to get you. Um, so here's an interesting page because we got a lot going on. Do you mind talking a bit about the geography of it? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before about making sure that readers sort of understand what's going on and in which direction people are running. Is that something that you really think about a lot when you're staging like a page like this where a lot is going on with a lot of different people?
Yeah, yeah, of course you have to. I mean, it 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 also helps you um, navigate where to put props
Hmm.
into the setting. I mean, for example, this one in the gymnasium
Hmm.
where we have the the supply room.
Hmm.
So it has to be in a place where it's on the edge of the gymnasium so that it will have
Hmm.
enough space for the um, what do you call this, the supply room.
Right.
So so it's important, but also because I'm also aware that in future issues or future scenes,
Hmm.
the it will you might need to refer to that place again. So it's
Right.
important to know where it is in the school.
Right.
So things like that, it makes an artist's life more challenging, but also more interesting in a way that it challenges you to think like an architect would,
Hmm.
or something like that, which is important for successful drawings, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's like for me, it's like you say, it's now part of the geography. So like we hadn't seen a whole lot of the gym before this, I think, in fact, we had one gym class earlier on who went outside, so they didn't even go in the gymnasium. Um, so it's nice because now it's like, okay, in my head, now I can picture the gymnasium because I've seen how you draw it. I can picture the supply room, which is right off it, because now I've seen you draw it. So it's like in my head, if we ever need to have something happen in the gym or happen in the supply room, I know exactly where it is. I know exactly what it looks like. I know the dimensions of it because I feel like I've seen it now. That it makes it more solid. It makes it something that we can then reference back to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Anton goes through the storage room. Alex runs off to go chase after Sarah and try and help her out. While in the supply room, something trips him up and grabs him. Mr. Waleed happens to walk up at the same time and is like, "Oh my God, not this thing!" Um, and decides to get it away, and just runs off. And Anton sees what it is. The audience doesn't get to see what it is, just gets to see this tentacle thing. And we will have to find out at the very end of the issue what exactly is going on there. Is it I've always actually been kind of curious about this. Is it a challenge when like the script asks you to not reveal things? Like here's a case where Anton is being, pulled up by the Golgoroth. Spoiler. Um, is it hard to do that without showing things? Like it's got to be a challenge, I would think.
Yeah, of course, it's always a challenge, but you have to find a way, at least make it as subtle as possible. I mean, it's impossible not to show anything at all. So
Right.
you just have to pick and choose which one you can show, be vague
Hmm.
as possible.
Hmm.
So usually just hide them in shadow or show
Yeah.
as little detail as possible. But yeah, it's possible, but it's also not really more of a challenge, but more of a conundrum.
Yeah.
It's always a problem solving thing when it comes to art.
Yeah. I think it's that thing where it's like that difference between comic book art and panels and like a movie. Like in a movie, you could show this from like the Golgoroth's point of view. And so like you could show exactly what happens and you're never seeing the Golgoroth. And so like that's a way that they would do it. But like in comics it doesn't really work like that because you have these different panels, these different points of view, these different like perspectives in the room that you're seeing things from. So I imagine it's a lot harder than the way like a movie or a TV show would do it.
Yeah, it's also possible with comic books, but it's always different
Mhm.
from moving pictures or animation. You just
Yeah.
have to find a different way to do it. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's always possible to do so.
Yeah. And I like what you say about, you got to tuck little things in here or hide things in shadows. So like you see the bit of tentacle in the second panel, and then of course you see the shadows of the tentacles in the fifth panel, and then you actually see a bit of a tentacle in the sixth panel. So it's like you're dropping these little hints, but they're subtle and they're there again. There are those kind of things that you might not see on the first read through, but you'll definitely see them on the second read through.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's the same way with horror movies, wherein how do you hide the monster when it's obviously there?
Right.
So yeah,
Uh,
it's just a different problem to analyze and figure things out. It's just constant thinking on your toes.
right. Right. You do it well, so I'm always impressed when you do. Sarah and Kimmy run down the hallway. Ricky is there and takes pictures with his camera, and even the girl that he's talking to is annoyed that he's even talking to her. Then when he shows her the pictures of the rat things, she still doesn't believe it. And he's just, he's like, what do I have to do to prove to you people that crazy things are happening? Why don't you believe me? Um, the 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 carnies chase past him, and Sarah and Kimmy head down into the basement. The carnies think, okay, well, we've got you trapped in the basement now, except for there's this giant hole in the wall that heads into the rat thing caves underneath, underneath ground. Um, the hole isn't big enough for one of the carnies to fit through. It is big enough for Kimmy and Sarah and one of the carnies to chase after them. Um, and suddenly now they are in the rat thing's caves. Um, do you want to talk a bit about, again, we've talked about how Sarah is sort of progressing into becoming a rat thing or devolving into becoming a rat thing, and that second panel where she's crawling through, she just looks like a rat. Even just crawling through, you can tell that that's something that's sort of happening to her, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to show how cramped
Hmm.
the tunnel actually is,
Hmm.
because you just imagine that whatever crawled out of it was very, very thin or
Hmm.
slender.
Yep.
But also maybe Sarah is instinctively doing this.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, she's changing, but she's also instinctively doing this because
Right.
she's been a rat thing for most of her life. It's just that she's discovering it just now.
Yeah.
And so all her latent abilities are just there waiting to be discovered. And so when you put her in a situation or in a place where she thrives, I guess those instincts will come out. I mean,
Yep.
she doesn't even realize how good she can see in the dark.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Also,
Hmm.
while we're talking about caves,
Hmm.
I, I read somewhere about strange phenomena happening in different caves around the world, and that it's connected by energy lines or something, and that people tend to find um, supernatural occurrences in those places,
Hmm.
like the New Jersey Devil and
Yeah. Hmm.
places in the Congo. I mean, that's like continents apart, but it's just interesting for me that we have this series of tunnels in Miskatonic because it just works so well with that idea.
Yeah, it really does. And I like the way that you draw the tunnels, that you sort of capture that feeling of mystery and kind of monsters. Like, just that third panel of the stalactites and the stalagmites, they look like teeth, like they're getting ready to bite something. It's this nice feeling of danger, but also like primitive animal sort of danger. It just,
Yeah,
it works so well.
yeah, and also the claustrophobic nature of it. You
Hmm.
just want danger all around you when
Yeah.
you're inside these caverns.
Hmm. And it's the color has changed. It's dark now. Like we've gone very quickly from a modern, well-lit school right into this sort of primitive cave that's dark and mysterious, and it just you feel like you're in a different world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a different world.
Yeah. But it's a world that Sarah can exist in, so it's interesting. Um,
Hmm.
okay, so Sarah and Kimmy are in the caves and they're trying to hide from the Carney who's trying to find them. And Sarah's just trying to get Kimmy to be quiet. And she's got her hand over Kimmy's mouth and Kimmy's sort of biting her and scratching at her and really just trying to say, look, you got to be quiet. Otherwise, they're going to put you back in the cage and they're going to laugh at you and throw things at you and tear things apart. And, we're really getting a glimpse into what Sarah's going through, that she knows exactly what it feels like to be Kimmy. which is kind of what's been driving her this whole time to she couldn't let Kimmy just go. She had to go and make sure that Kimmy was going to be okay. Um,
Yeah, it's
uh,
like what we said before. It's her instincts taking
mhm,
over her.
right.
So she probably has this familiar link with Kimmy that she can't fully understand right now, but she
Yeah.
just feels like she needs to protect her somehow.
Right.
And it's only in the later parts that we see that evidently.
Mhm. Right. And probably the same instincts are going through Kimmy. We'll talk about that
Yeah.
in a minute, but Kimmy is instinctively looking for family, and in kind of the same way, Sarah's kind of instinctively looking for family. Um, and probably there's pheromones or hormones or stuff in the sense that are doing it as well. Like yeah, it's sort of all working together. Um, the Carney hears them, grabs them, and starts dragging them, and they're of course fighting. And the Carney's like, "I don't need you. I just need the rat thing, girl." And so he's talking about getting rid of Sarah, maybe killing her at this point because he's just sick of this. When he steps in something and he looks down, and it's like pieces of torn apart rat thing. Um, and of course, Sarah's still punching at him. Um, and he's like, all right, fine. I'm just, I don't need you. And behind him, we see this giant rat thing. We have seen rat thing sort of queens, the moms sort of in the past. We saw one when they went to Innsmouth. Um, and there is one here, and it tears that carny apart. I love this page, that you go from this pure dread where something's going to happen, and then immediately you see that it's just that powerful and it happens. Um, can you talk a bit about like using speed lines and things like that? Because I look at that second panel of using the speed lines to show speed, and I tried to work it in with the sound effect, to
Mm-hmm.
really convey the speed with which this happens.
Yeah. Well, with this page, I didn't really want to show the creature in its full entirety yet because
Mm,
I think it's important that we continue to hide how injured it is at this
yep.
point.
Hmm.
But I also wanted to show how powerful these things are and that
Hmm.
human beings are just no match for these things. Their
Yeah.
ferocity, their speed, their agility is just unmatched.
Right.
Maybe just the other Mythos creatures can actually go toe to toe with them, but as a human, you're just helpless against them.
Right.
And the second panel just conveys that
Hmm.
that sheer power that they have. And yeah, you're right. It just rips the Cardi apart in
Right.
an instant.
And I also like that what it also does is, okay, so we see that the carney gets, ripped apart, but now, like, we don't care about the carney. What now we're concerned about is if it can rip a carney apart that easily, what's it going to do to Sarah? Um, which of course we find out in the next page. So the carney gets killed. The Sarah is like, please don't, please don't do that to me. And Kimmy steps in to protect Sarah, from the injured queen, who we see is injured now. Um, and Sarah is figuring it out that the queen is injured, that there's all these dead rat things on the ground that have been massacred, and that this is kind of maybe Kimmy's mom or some sort of relationship to Kimmy, that just died here. And that unfortunately there's nothing that she can do to help the queen or mom rat thing, that it's just its injuries are too much. um we then get the next page where we get to see the massacred rat thing. So do you mind talking to me about this? Because I mean, this was, I I don't know, maybe it's easy, maybe it's not, but to me it's like this visual of like just carnage rat things is really powerful. It's like, you know, we've seen how powerful the rat things are. We saw one that just destroyed this carny, and yet they're just sit here decimated. And how was it trying to come up with this?
Yeah, we were just talking about how cartoony some of the other parts of the carnival was.
Hmm.
And when you get to this point, it just hits you hard that something this grotesque could happen.
Hmm.
And I think it was important to show how grotesque the actual massacre is, just to
Hmm.
if you saw how powerful the rat thing was when dealing with the carny, can you imagine the creature that did this to them?
Right.
I mean, there's a whole tribe of them that's just lying there in pieces. So I
Hmm.
think that was important to show them like that, and also uh, show that Kimi just has nowhere else to run anymore.
Yeah.
Her whole family has been wiped out, and even Sarah is unsure of whether her own father is still alive.
Right.
And it really hits her heart that maybe deep inside she does care for these things,
Yeah.
and that seeing this horrible thing happen to them is just drawing her closer to that beastly madness.
Right.
And I think it scares her as much as it scares Kimmy.
Right. Right. And again, that it's that complicated thing for Sarah. It's like, is she human? Is she rat thing? You know, her mom was kind of a human monster, and her dad was a rat monster, but her dad helped her out. So it's like there's no clear lines for Sarah. And so yeah, like realizing that something massacred all these rat things, the first thing that she's going to think about is their dad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but she doesn't see him there. She knows she can't leave Kimmy here, because what if whatever comes back. So she takes it up the stairs that we saw again back in issue 2. That's how they got out to go back to her orchard, to her house, is up the stairs. And they head up, and she realizes that Kimmy had been down there when the massacre had happened or something like that, and she had run out to escape and was looking for her family, looking for someone to protect her, and came looking for Sarah, came looking to Sarah's house. Um, and so Sarah's like, okay, you know what? You're coming home with me. I have nowhere else to go. Anton can come and be a stray and live at my house. Kimmy, you're coming. You're the new stray. You're living at my house too. Sarah's sort of building this sort of nest of these people who are lost, and pulling them together to live in her house. Um, and she cleans up Kimmy. Brushes her hair, gives her a name, and Kimmy is able to say Sarah. The one word that she can say. Um, and they go back and they find Anton, and Anton is like, "Where have you been? I have so much to tell you." Um, and tells Sarah that the Golgoroth is back. That's what he saw in the school. Um, and of course, the Golgoroth had been killed by the rat things back in issue 6, or at least we thought it was killed. Um, it doesn't look dead to me now. Um,
Nope.
nope. You want to talk about Sarah cleaning up Kimmy? That uh, you do a nice thing here, which is that Kimmy starts off looking very animalistic, very rat thing, and by here you can start to see some of Kimmy's human features. So it looks, it doesn't look like a human, but it looks enough that you can see why Sarah would feel familiar with it and bring it in.
Yeah, yeah. Even in the previous page, you could already see her vulnerability.
Hmm.
And that's why the last panel of that page looks like a snow globe.
Yeah. Hmm.
So sometimes you can see that there's no snow in it. I thought this was the perfect time to bring back the snow.
Yep.
And I think it just kind of poignant to
Hmm.
have snow during this scene.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like, I mean, even the dialogue in that last panel, family,
Hmm.
then you see the two of them just together like that,
Yep.
at first awkwardly, and then, like I mentioned before, I think instinctively
Yep.
Sarah already knows how to take care of Kimmy.
Yep.
And like you said, she's becoming starting to become a bit more human.
Hmm.
And I think in future issues we'll find out why.
Hmm.
But at at the moment, it's just like more of Kimmy being more subdued, more docile, because she knows that she has nowhere else to run.
Right.
She only has Sarah, and
Hmm.
she has to do everything to survive. I
Right.
mean, that is still her instinct. Like you
Right.
said before, she ran away during the massacre, and up to this point, she's still trying to survive.
Right. Right. And the thing about rat things that we've seen before is that they're kind of they're grouped by family. It's like a little tribe. It's a little thing. And so she, when hers got killed down in the massacre, she's trying to find the place where she fits, with her family, with the group, a little nest of rats or whatever. And so I think Kimmy probably feels a little bit more comfortable, here with Sarah, with grandma, who probably again has that scent of family about her, and so she's probably a little bit more subdued now too. She feels a little bit safer as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that. She feels safe with Sarah for some
Right.
reason,
Right.
and it whether it's instinct, whether it's just necessity, who knows? But for
Right.
now, they both feel safe together.
Right. And it's again, so we talked about before about how we followed through the course of this day. And we started off with Sarah thinking, okay, human beings live up on the top, rat things live below. And by the end of the day, it's not so clear cut for her anymore, because she's part rat thing. Kimmy is mostly rat thing, probably all rat thing, whatever, and lives up on the surface now. Like Sarah's world has gotten a bit more confusing. It's not as black and white as it was at the beginning of the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is where we leave it. I want to touch on one last thing before we turn it off, if that's okay. I wanted to talk about your 3-panel cover, which we do. For people who get this on Kickstarter, we do usually 2 issues, one with a wraparound cover and then a surprise third cover. And you did one that showed Sarah, Anton, and Kimmy running through the carnival, being chased by the carnies, and heading towards um, the mom queen rat thing. Um, I really love that image, and I just wanted to touch on it a little bit because I think the coloring makes it so distinct and interesting to me. It feels like animation in a way. And I just wanted to mention it if people didn't see it to seek it out because it is such a cool image.
Yeah. I mean, it's always nice to work on a bigger canvas because you're able to show a bit more of what's inside the interior. So this was a big chance to show a bit more of the carnival and
Hmm.
a bit more of the action going on,
Hmm.
and include a lot more characters in it. As
Hmm.
for the colors, yeah, I think I've been experimenting with coloring a bit from the last few issues,
Hmm.
and hopefully I can bring it forward with future issues as well. So hopefully it won't be that much of a difference. Hopefully it will be an improvement, but we'll have to wait and see. But
Yep.
as for this one, I'm glad it turned out well. So yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah, I really liked it. I like how you experiment with color. I'm blessed to have been able to see some of what you're doing now and seeing how you're experimenting. And it's we've talked before, but we're 24 issues in. We're still excited about doing the art, about doing the writing, about telling the story, but also about experimenting and trying different things and finding new ways to do it. And I think shows that it's a series that very much is still alive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we try to not only motivate people to start getting into the series, but we're also trying to motivate each other
Hmm.
to continue with the series, and trying out new stuff is always good, so that the book doesn't become stale or
Right.
boring. So yeah, it's just natural evolution for
Mhm.
both artist and writer to do such things.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, look forward to it.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to people seeing issue 25 because it's a big issue. It's a crazy
Yeah.
issue. It's a very fun issue. It wasn't the easiest thing for us to make at the
Yes.
start, but I think it turned out great.
Someone in the past thought that 25 is a special number and
Hmm.
that you should celebrate it. So here we are.
Yep.
It's a
So
milestone, okay. Let's not make too little of it. It's a milestone. I mean, it's a
it's
big
definitely.
achievement to reach 25 issues. So yeah,
Hmm.
we decided to make it extra special. Let's
Right.
just
And
say
I,
it.
I and I think it is extra special. I think there's going to be a lot in there that a lot of people are going to be really excited about. Both people who are just used to our issues and our story and the characters and what they go through, but also people who are interested in the mythos and the Lovecraftian stuff. I think they're going to have a lot of fun with it. It ended up being a great milestone issue for us, and I think people are really going to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we will be launching that on Kickstarter in early 2025. Can't believe I'm saying that. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, that's issue
25,
24 for us.
25.
Yep. 25, issue 25 and 25.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for chatting
We
with
got
me. This is
25 gifts to give away. No, just joking.
yeah, we just need to figure out what they are.
We're not that big.
No, we're not.
We're
Well,
not big at all.
small gifts, small gifts. We'll figure it out. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, thanks for chatting with me. It's always fun. Um, it's
Yeah,
uh,
always fun.
it's just about noon there for you, and it's just about 11 o'clock p.m. for me here. So I'm gonna go
Yeah,
crash.
lunchtime here.
Yeah, you eat your lunch, and I'm gonna go to sleep.
Sounds like a plan.
It sounds like a plan. All right, thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. Bye.